Indian Ocean rumblings continue on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for December 30th. So around the world we still have a relatively quiet tropics, in fact, with two tropical depressions or possibly storms that were around for a while. 5S did become a tropical storm, and 6P was a cyclone of some description. We're not sure how strong it was yet, but it is now moving through Fiji as a remnant low. Well, looking at the Atlantic, we're obviously well into the off-season. There's still that area of interest there, but we've now demarked it, so it is just out there. We're not giving it any chance of development. Looking quite interesting though, as an extratropical feature over the open ocean. In the Eastern Pacific, we've got a few little areas of storms as well. A little big pressure, low pressure system there to the east of the Hawaiian Islands. A little bit of a loss in the satellite picture there for a few tens of degrees, around 150 to 180 degrees unfortunately today. In the Western Pacific, we've got a few areas of thunderstorms and clouds there as well, convective clouds, mainly to the west of the Philippines, but also a few areas near Palau and Micronesia, and towards Guam as well, might be getting some significant precipitation. In the North Indian Ocean, it is generally quiet. There are a few little banks of cloud, though, in the southern to central Bay of Bengal, affecting the weather in Sri Lanka and also for the very northernmost part of Sumatra, Indonesia. Well, looking to where all the action is, it's the South Indian Ocean. East and west, we've got areas of interest. What's left of 5S, of course, still to the south of the Cocos Keeling Islands. Two 30% areas of interest, because we're not really sure which one's actually going to develop now, but it is looking favourable for at least one of them. And 40% close to Australia. Moving away, of course, towards Christmas Island and Cocos Keeling Islands as well. And there's 6P entering the massive area of the Pacific Ocean as it starts to move through Fiji, just on the international date lines, just crossed through now into the rest of the South Pacific. So there is 6P, which had a much better account of itself before it reached the Fijian Islands. It's now moving on towards the east there, through those eastern islands of Fiji, and you can clearly see there's very little left of it. It is a shell of what it briefly was a couple of days ago, with a massive fleet of dry air moving in its wake. So very little moisture, very little thunderstorms left of that system now. It may still have a circulation, but really cannot be categorized as a tropical cyclone with such a poor convective pattern, and most likely those winds aren't up there very much. Incidentally, the GFS is initializing this with tropical storm force winds, but I highly doubt that. And this is the other one, 5S. You can see right at the top of the image there, that's the Cocos Keeling Islands, and it's made very little progress in the last few days. We've been watching this for a while, haven't we? It's slowly moving southwestwards right now. We've classified it as a remnant low. There is still some convection there. It's quite far displaced from where the center of this system is, and it's been that way for quite a while. It's been really struggling with very heavy wind shear ever since it peaked, actually, as a brief tropical storm a few days ago. Here's one of the other invests, and I've already lost track of which numbers we're up to now. This might be 92S, but don't quote me on that. This is the furthest west one that we've got, and as you can see, it's to the northeast of Madagascar, a small island there. That might be Agalega, I'm not sure. No, that's further east. That could be one of those Seychelles Islands, actually. Here's the North Atlantic. Very large extratropical system up there, reminding us of what happened a few weeks ago when we had a chance of development. And now looking off to the US East Coast, that big front there moving on through, that is what was yesterday's moderate risk tornado outbreak event. It was a slight risk today, not much of it verified as badly as what we might have thought. It is down to barely a marginal, and no thunderstorms for the next few days across the US. Here's the Eastern Pacific looking relatively quiet here. A few areas of cloud cover, banks of cloud there, generally low stuff. And here's the Western Pacific again, showing you these storms off towards the southern side of Palau and towards Guam. A thunderstorm or two not far from Guam there. And this is the Philippines, a close-up view of the Philippines today, showing a few areas of thunderstorms over the central part of the islands. Another wide shot of the Western Pacific again with the cloud top enhancement, some really high cloud tops from that equatorial storm down there southeast of Palau. And this is the Bay of Bengal, showing a line of thunderstorms stretching from the west coast, almost the west coast of Malaysia there, on towards the rest of the Bay of Bengal. Slightly different imagery that we're looking at today because some of the imagery is not up to date. So we're showing this viewpoint, a full disc from Meteosat 9, looking at the western part of the Indian Ocean basin. And here's another view from the Force 13 website. You can check all of this imagery live as well, force13.com/satellite. And looking east, you can see the Australian region and a big burst of convection from that 40% area that we're watching next. Looks like that is really eager to reach tropical cyclone status, so we'll keep watching that one. And the Southern Pacific, pretty quiet here, but a train of moisture, plume of it extending from the Solomon Islands southeastwards. Sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic are obviously much cooler now that we're at this time of year, but the Caribbean still holding on pretty firmly to 28 degrees Celsius or slightly higher. The Western Pacific still has a few really hot spots as well, really, considering the time of year. 29 to 30 degrees Celsius in a few of those lower latitude spots, and off Palawan in the Philippines. In the southwest Indian Ocean, we have obviously a very warm spot off the west coast of Madagascar, 30 degrees plus. A little bit cooler actually towards the east at the minute, but I expect those temperatures will be building in. And the west coast of Australia, extremely warm. Look at that, 32 degrees plus off the western Australian coast, and further stretching all the way around the top end and into the Gulf of Carpentaria as well. Coral Sea looking decent, one or two hot spots there as well, and warming up nicely. If you look at that, these are the anomalies, possibly 4 or 5 degrees above average, just to the north of Port Hedland and Exmouth, Australia. Elsewhere, off the southeastern part of Madagascar, looking good there in those subtropical zones. In the Western Pacific, generally above average, but you can't really deviate away from the middle of the Pacific there in the equator, where we have that massive cool spot, signifying a bit of a La Nina bias. Oceanic key content still looking pretty good for a significant area actually of the Western Pacific, holding on to some of that remnant energy from the peak season of the season just gone. Eastern Pacific still has a tiny chunk there as well, and the South Pacific also looking at really high amounts of energy in those lower latitudes. That will continue to spread southwards, already making its way through Vanuatu, and parts of the Coral Sea starting to get up there as well. I'm pretty sure we'll start to see some more activity in the Coral Sea soon. So let's see what the GFS model has wheeled out for the next few days. Looking at the Southwest Indian Ocean, these two areas of interest. You can see them both there, 30% chances of development. Either of them could develop, possibly both. At the moment, GFS is now favouring the eastern system, when for the longest time it was going for the western one. And that will have big implications on what will actually happen over there, because we were looking almost at a Cheeto repeat at one or two occasions. Now that looks much less likely, I'm happy to say, with the systems likely to stay further out to sea towards the east. That's into the new year. And this is 5S, what's left of it, veering off towards the west eventually, and then this next system, that new area of interest, that was that 40%, really blowing up into a tropical cyclone in earnest around the 2nd or 3rd of January. There it goes. Incidentally, for New Year, we do have a stream running right now. We're counting down to the New Year, looking at satellite imagery across the world with countdown clocks everywhere. You might be interested in checking that out whilst we're not doing much with the tropics, it seems. So in terms of rainfall over the next 7 days, you can see what we're looking at in the Southwest Indian Ocean at this point. You can see a few areas that are going to get some elevated rainfall amounts, one or two isolated spots in northern Madagascar as well in the next 7 days, which could get in excess of 6 inches of rainfall. mostly thunderstorms, and that would be over 150 millimeters. Parts of the Seychelles also possibly getting up towards 9 inches of rain there, and you can see that 19 inch for that potential cyclone later on out to sea. Shouldn't be over any land areas, but some of those areas further west, they could see 9 inches. That's nearly 250 millimeters. In the longer range, this is day 5 through 10, and you can see that that cyclone persists only for a little bit and then dies off. So in the end, really nothing of real note out of what happens over there. That system looking decent for a little bit. It stays in the sort of the intertropical convergence zone region, really doesn't really dive down into the subtropics like we would normally see for a storm that's turning eastwards down there in the southern hemisphere. So not much going on with that. Now here's the other one. This big storm now is much larger than the other one. You just about see the other one on the left there, and there it is, possibly reaching hurricane equivalent status. That one does dig much deeper downwards now, especially compared to the other storms that we've been seeing lately, this early season fray. Well, they're getting stronger now as we get later into the season, and there it is, managing to do much more of a recurve as it continues to push southwards there, obviously not affecting any land areas. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store. As always, we have our usual items as well as our full season and individual storm animations available. We waited 1775 days for Hone. Anyway, moving on to the Scilly range. Well, there are 2 Scillies today. First of all, in the North Indian Ocean. Could there be a development in the second week of January there? There it is, a storm forming pretty much out of nothing and developing quite substantially, nearly to hurricane equivalent status, getting close to Sri Lanka and then towards the Chennai area of India. This is obviously a very long way out. It only develops there initially on the 11th of January, so that is nearly 2 weeks out. So I wouldn't give that much thought yet. You want to see something even weirder? Well, let's look over here. You'll see this line starting to get a little bit stronger, and on the end of it there is a system that tries and succeeds in becoming a tropical cyclone there, off the coast of Vitória, Brazil, which is way further north than what we would normally see for a South Atlantic storm if we got one. It's even further northeast of Rio de Janeiro. This system becoming a brief tropical cyclone, but that again is beyond 2 weeks. I wouldn't expect it. Well, on this day it was a late year surprise, and not a good one, for the Philippines, which had Super Typhoon Harriet knocking on the door back in 1959, ending a crazy decade in the Western Pacific by all accounts, with a powerful late season storm. 150 miles per hour was the peak in the southern hemisphere. They hadn't started naming storms yet, so it was 7S in the southwest Indian Ocean, about to start curving southwards, and 6P, which was leaving the east coast of Queensland over the Coral Sea. We don't know exactly how strong that one was, but the pressure was around 990. Well, back to today, and there are only 2 days left of the year. We'll of course be here hopefully with a tropical weather bulletin tomorrow, but we won't be here on New Year's Day. Tony is next in the Atlantic. If we did get a storm in that tiny period, in the Eastern Pacific it's Miriam, and in the Central Pacific it's Iona, which will be the next name no matter what year it is. In the Western Pacific our next name is Wu Tip, and in the North Indian Ocean it will be Shakti. Those names are still evergreen as well, that those will be the next names no matter the year too. In the Australian region, the next name is Sean, the Southwest Indian Ocean, Dichlady, and in the South Pacific, it's Pitta. That's it from tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.